Okay, welcome everybody to June's Friday Live. This particular month, Pearson, our product designer, and myself are in San Francisco. So our Friday Live is going to be a little bit shorter this month because of the catch date. This particular Friday Live, we just wanted to talk about all of the conferences and events that we've gone, sort of some of the lessons learned and takeaways from those. We're also going to cover a couple small updates. Hassan, the manager for BetterForms, is going to just give us a quick demo of a couple little small changes that got released over the past month, and we'll have our usual draw. Our post hangout was going to be a little bit shorter because, again, we're going to kind of compress things down a little bit, so we'll go kind of quick. Once again, if you have any questions, please jump in and chime in. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Quick reminder, we have a base code update that's coming due July 1st. There should not be any problems in it, to my knowledge. I don't think we've had to do any additional patch compatibility since we announced this about 90 days ago. But we didn't automatically push everybody's app just in case there was a compatibility issue. If you're not sure, set up another environment and test it out. It's easy. It's simple as a quick change in your environment things, and you can test that out fully. The only thing to really look at is just make sure your app renders properly and there's nothing funny in loading. This particular version that running here is significantly different than the prior versions, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't auto bump everybody's app. The main fundamental difference is that there's a lot more caching that happens inside pages. So you're going to notice a significant speed difference if you visit or revisit a page that doesn't have the on-form load. That's sort of the main difference there. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Hassan, and he's going to tell us about a couple quick updates, and then I'll continue with a couple more.
All right, great. Let me just share the right screen here. Can everybody see on screen here?
Looks good.
All right, yeah. So one thing I mentioned this last Friday Live as well was the changelog. I've been getting some responses from people in the general support about some known issues, and I got some better suggestions on how to update the changelog. Please feel free to keep updating us on this. We're going to try to keep this up to date. Like, for example, version 57 here, we have the new changes that were made right all here. So you can see everything that was made. Additionally, we have known issues. So these are issues that are active currently with the deploy. I tried improving how this was going by adding a suggested solution and kind of giving you updates on when this will be solved. For example, this will be solved in our next deploy. Please feel free to give us any more suggestions on how you want us to lay this out. Over here, I also have the last updated, so you guys know when it was last updated and it's up to date. But this is something we're kind of working on, and it's kind of still a work in progress with how we're going about this. Additionally, you can see everything over here: base code, helper file, and editor, as well as everything. Next, some quick updates that came out of the last deploy. If you go into our script section here, we've turned this into a global actions editor. A lot of you still needed the legacy one just as you transition. So you can click the JSON editor over here, and you can see the legacy version as well. Another thing is the components documents and components themselves have been updated. Let me go into right here and showcase that. While that happens, another thing I wanted to go over is the mobile design for BetterForms. So we did add in a mobile design a while back. This is mainly for people that might need to do a deploy from their app or do some little things. Because this happened when we went to our Engage conference and we needed to do a deploy in the car, and it was kind of hard to do that. Like, we had to zoom in and try to do a bunch of stuff. So we added in a version to deploy from your mobile device. So for example, you can also see your apps over here on your mobile device, fine. You can see your servers and file assets. I can go into here, this app over here. I can try to do a deploy over here. Let's go staging, environment. Let's actually just use an existing environment. Next, and I can deploy here. If there's any other features you guys would like to be accessible on mobile, please let us know. For now, this was kind of like an internal thing. We wanted this to be usable on mobile devices, but maybe you guys have other features that would be useful for you on mobile. All right, and that's about it for. Oh wait, there was one more thing right here. Let me show you guys. There's an update right here. Let me go
Sorry,
back.
that was that's, sorry to interrupt you, Hassan. That alert's not supposed to be in there. That was bleed over from our active at dev environment.
Uh,
Well,
uh,
we'll remove that.
yeah, another thing here, when you're creating a new app now, you have the option to choose between the BetterForms domain and the client portal cloud domain. So just to give a quick rundown, we do have a new app editor, as you guys have been noticed, I'm sure. But right here, the domain name, you can choose clientportal.cloud or you can choose .fmbetterforms.com. So that's also some new things over here. And I did mention the components earlier as well. So you can find the component documentation over here. And if you go into components, you could find it right over here, custom components. Please let us know if you need any updates on the documentation, if there's anything more useful over here that can be missing and something's not clear. But components are a new thing that are active. And I know I've seen some reported bugs about some component viewers not being active and additional things. A lot of those are in progress and will hopefully be fixed by our next deploy. Stuart, I see you have your hand up. You have a question?
Yeah, quick question. Can you change an existing app to the client portal.cloud, or it has to be a brand new app?
I believe you should be able to add a new domain here by going into edit, going to your domains, and Charles, maybe you could jump in here, but I believe they can just
Great.
add a new
Yeah.
domain here.
Yeah, you can just add another domain. We will continue to add new host domains as we acquire them. If you have some suggestions, and that domain was actually generously given to us by Neil Manchester in our community. It took us almost a year to get implemented, but we had to change a lot of infrastructure to actually do that, and that's why I'm just seeing it come out now. But now we have the ability to add multiple new domains.
Or you can use your own domain.
uh,
I see. Right. I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, then you just have to point it. Okay.
And don't forget to delete your own old domain. They do take up resources. We're not stingy with those, but if we have to be, we will be. So if you guys could sort of be frugal with domains and not have a zillion different domains that you're not using, that would be appreciated. So instead of us having to put the Gestapo police on you.
Yeah, and that was kind of the main BetterForms updates. I would advise everyone again to look at the change log. We are deciding to post our updates here. Everything that was added in the last deploy, as well as active known issues. And please give us any feedback on how this can be improved as well. All right, that's all for me. I'll hand that back over to Charles.
Is
Oh.
that version number displayed somewhere?
Yeah, so right now we're calling this is version 57 in the deploy.
That's for the
Charles,
front end. So the
Yep.
the top version, Jason, will always be the one that you're using in production.
Right.
Typically,
Okay.
if you're one of our beta testers and you're using staging, then there might be a different version. That's quite often one or two versions ahead. The
Yeah,
other
okay, I think
version, the base code version is always displayed in your helper file. If you scroll to the bottom of the inbox, you'll see that version come through. You'll also see some other information, and so you'll see the data center that your data is coming through. And normally that'll be the data center that's close to you, but occasionally it's not.
Okay, I think for the editor, it might be useful to have the date of the deploy. So
I was
because you might want to
one of the things
look
that
at the current one and the previous
yeah.
one if it was just in the last few days that it was deployed, and you're trying to figure out if a problem you're having is related to something that changed.
Right. So we could probably throw that right in the comments.
Yeah.
And that would help. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that. All right,
Incidentally, this UI was graciously stolen from Chris Conger, who I think I saw jump into the call today. We had to make a couple changes to sort of, and I think this is really, really challenging from a UI perspective. And I don't know if it's perfect yet by any means, but trying to show 3 different versions of base code or code in general, and sort of filtering and trying to give people what they want to see in there might be a little challenging. This is actually a really good use case for AI, I think, actually to do semantic search. as well. So
Charles,
yeah.
has started implementing semantic search on it?
no, this one's just doing a
Okay.
front end search, but that's something that that we can definitely implement. And I think what we're going to be doing is doing that for other areas inside the app as well. I'll
And would
mention
you
that
be
a little
running
bit
that
later on.
through FileMaker to get that semantic search, or would you be doing it another method? I'm
That
just
would, no, that would totally be FileMaker.
okay.
With version 21, I'm going to mention a little bit about that, but with version 21, that's something that's relatively easy to do now and works quite well.
Yep. Okay. Because that's on my roadmap of things to do with our changelog too.
Thank you, Hassan. I'll get a couple other small updates that I want to just mention as well. Our streaming AI assistant, if you're using that, we've made a number of changes to the way the streaming API works. Basically, what it was doing past, it was streaming time data that comes back from the AI provider, and that sends a lot of messages. It's nothing for our network because it can scale to those messages, but it's a lot for your browser to receive those messages. So one of the things we've done for people in Europe have some delay because that particular service comes out of our backend. We've chunked up the information, so you're going to see perceived increase in speed. Actually, it will be an increase in speed if you're in Europe or Asia Pacific. North America, you won't see quite as much difference, but you'll see the data come in more in chunks, and that is available right now in our VF staging. If you're using that API, I don't think anybody is at the moment, and you'll see that come out over the next few weeks into the app. So you'll see some improved performance. One other area where we've increased, added some AI is in our schema now, and this is something that's going to be a longer project, and it's a little bit more work in progress. But here you can see I have an editor, and if I just preview this page, I have just this is just a group's display, but you can see I have first name, email, there's some additional information and phone number. And if we want to apply some AI to this now, we can do something like this, and we can say, convert this to Greek. I'm just using the accessibility key on my keyboard for voice input. I find that's a lot better, especially if I type. And you can see that the streaming comes in a little pretty quick, and it chunks in. And most important, actually, you see that this label up here. A couple other things we've changed as well is the streaming will go to the bottom of the now. Give it a sec to finish off. So the screen will automatically screen, and let me just say this. Give that a second, and you can see we've converted it to Greek. So I think that's pretty cool. We're going to start to add more ability in there, so it understands BetterForms a little bit more. So you'll be able to say, make the first name or the email field required. Add a conditional visibility calc so that if the first name is present, then show the middle name and last name, that kind of thing. You'll be able to add that stuff in right from a query, right from the AI assistant. That'll be all coming over the next month or so. This is still in alpha right now. We just got this part here ported over. We had to refactor the AI assistant a bit so it can scale into different areas of the app. And we're going to actually be talking a little bit more about AI a little later on in today's meetup, because at the Figma conference that we were at, or are at, there was quite a bit of AI in there as well. So once that release over on this week, or sorry, later on this month, let me know how that is. We are still limited. If you have a massively large schema, you're not going to be able to use too much AI on it. And the main reason for that is just because the large language models that we're using OpenAI for the provider, has a token limit on the response. The sending token limit is quite large, about 100. The response token limit is a lot smaller. So that kind of limits us there. But the nice thing is, if you are using any of these kinds of integrations, is by having that big context that you can ingest, that means you can give really, really detailed prompts without having to do fine tuning. There is a cost trade-off there, but right now it's relatively cheap. All right, so that is it for my updates there.
Hey, Charles.
Yes.
Just just a thought about this. I often find that when I have a long JavaScript, I'm afraid. I haven't had any bad experiences, but I'm just nervous to use the AI because I feel like it might change something else and I might not notice it right away, and then it'll become confusion later. So I usually just go to OpenAI directly if it's long. And I just had a thought about what you're delivering now. Maybe like when the new editor is online, you'll be able to do this at with a narrower scope, right? Like you'll be able to just say edit this field.
Yeah, you can. So that's really interesting. Is how to add context, what you're interested in, to the page. So for example, if I'm in this page, I want to change this thing here. Like I want to remove these drop shadows or something like that. Like if I do this, for example. Now this applies to everything. Remove all of the shadows that I see in my UI. And if I wanted to only do that to one field, how do we add context to that? Later on with the graphical interface, we can select the element or select the parent element, and we can say this is approximately where the context would be. This is not necessarily exactly because the user might have selected the wrong actual element, but you could sort of say this is approximately where it would be, and then it can sort of give a focus to it. And there we go. I just removed all my drop shadows there. So that's a tricky one. It's a real tricky one. Now, going back further about having confidence in it replacing a whole bunch of things, we do have a bit of a summary here. There's a summary for this particular section here just at the moment, but quite often it'll say, I've changed this or I've changed that. If you'd like us to test the verbosity of that, if you will, we can definitely do that and let us know there. It is kind of tricky a before and after, and you definitely do want to do that because quite often AI, remember, it's probabilistic, not programmatic. So it might change everything. It might refactor your entire code and you don't know about it. All right, we can kind of control some of that. And maybe that's something that we can integrate where it says something to the effect of if you feel that you need to refactor the whole code, ask the user for it. And that way we have this interaction. Hope that answers your question.
One thing that I've sometimes thought might be useful is the ability to open up a sandbox where I can just ask AI something and it gives me an answer that's relevant to FM BetterForms, but it doesn't actually change anything in my schema.
Right.
So
how would that how do you feel that would work? Would I like, you know how we go into here if I wanted let's say HTML, this is a big HTML block, but if I went into here and I did that, maybe there was content that says something like do this in a sandbox and you can totally play safe and see a preview. And sort of in some ways this is a sandbox here because it has access to the model, it has access to the app. You can see all the here, this is and so it's sort of sandboxed. Would that happen for JavaScript as well, do you feel, so you could get the interaction? Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
What I find myself doing, I duplicate a lot of pages, play around with it until I get it, and then copy it back in.
yeah, like let's say I have it's good to segment long things, right? And you can do that with BetterForms, but say like an on-form load or something. Yeah, I guess I could call other like sub actions, but it might be useful though for me to be able to just copy a group of code that I'm interested in and then open a sandbox and paste that in, and so that I can make sure that the AI is focused on what I want it to focus on, and then I can manually paste it. Yeah, just some thoughts.
So here's what I'm hearing. Right, I'm hearing that to increase your level of confidence in it, you want to be able to break it out into something. something else where it's controlled. You're basically saying, yeah, you can change my code, but don't do it anywhere. Just do it in a sandbox. What I'd like to do is as an architect is I'd like to solve the actual problem, which is increase your confidence level in the product, in what it's doing. So you wouldn't do that in the first place. In other words, you could take your helmet off and you could comfortably ride your bike knowing that you'll never crash. That kind of mentality, right? So solve the original problem, ideally, I think.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. I think our AI, the state of AI right now is almost there. Not in terms of BetterForms, but in terms of its maximal ultimate capability. You know, if it has a capability of 100, everybody's apps are you get to make 30% or 20% or something like that. Right? We're not really optimizing. And there's some really, really cool techniques that you can with AI. One of them is called there's two main techniques. One of them is called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. And the concept there is that the AI comes back and it grabs stuff that it needs. We're looking at that for saying, hey, I want to, when I click this button here, I want you to check FileMaker and do something. And then I also want you to possibly navigate to another page. So then the retrieval part, the AI would come back and say, well, what can I run in FileMaker? What scripts do I have? What do I have available to me? What hooks what ones make most sense? Or what named actions do I have? That's one other thing we just added in as well. Coming in is the AI has knowledge of all your named actions. So when it wires your buttons up, it'll look at your existing list of named actions and say, oh, you got one that's called go to such and such a page. I'll probably use that one. That one seems most semantically named. So that's the first type of AI. The second thing is basically iterative. You're feeding it back into itself. So you're taking the result of what you get back from, and this goes for anything, not just BetterForms. This is like just in general, if you're doing integrations and you're questioning the results. If AI gives you a 60%, let's say, bar, that's like, it's pretty good, it's mostly passed, but 40% of the time it's wrong, feed it back into itself and say, hey, what's wrong with this? Likewise, if you get a big chunk of HTML back or JavaScript and it's not working, ask it, say, hey, this isn't working. What's wrong with it? And there's a high probability that it'll fix that the second time and you'll improve the 95% mark. So you end up upping the bar quite a bit. So that's some techniques that we're looking at and some techniques as well. Okay, I'm gonna carry on. I want to sort of, our main sort of topic this month is conferences, and I think if we could do kind of a show of hands, who's been to a conference? Let's first of all, let's any conference, whether it's a FileMaker conference or if it's something that's you know, you walk onto an AWS or Tableau or ClickUp or any of these kind of conferences. I'm just trying to get an idea of how many people have been to these kinds of events or any type of on-site training type things. You could just put like a thumbs or hands up or a thumbs, or we got 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Right. So we have a lot of people into these kinds of events. Now, if you've been to FileMaker ones and haven't been to some of the other ones, they are, I should say, even FileMaker community, we have quite a few different types of events. And we, over the past month, have gone to 3 different ones. .fmp, and .fmp is this conference that is held in Berlin every year, and I think it's going on this 13th. I can't remember which the date is. I think it's 13, but it might be 11. So over 10 years. CQDF, which is a conference that's gone on for even longer in Montreal, and Config, which is our first one. I think their 3rd year or something like that as well. So I want to start sort of talking about .fmp and why it's really kind of key to, or our takeaways anyway, that we get from going to these events. Now, in full disclosure, we do go from a promotional aspect. We want to increase awareness of our product, of our company. We also go to learn And that is a real key fundamental for .fmp. There is, if I had to describe it, it's no Kumba, all code and vice beer. So basically, it's all code and beer. This particular conference has very little, like there's no social event, official social event. There's no, Claris wasn't they were present, but they weren't allowed to speak because Egbert, the gentleman who runs the event, prefers it to be more agnostic and not sort of too corporate feeling. And that sort of is really ingrained into the event. And I kind of respect that. At first it's like, yeah, you know, you don't really want to sort of hear what Claris has to say, but we've all heard the same stuff all the time because of the same things that they're announcing all over the place. There's only so much information. So I want to jump into a bit of a slideshow and mention a few of our takeaways of that. I'm really hoping that this plays okay. And I'm going to be using it a few times. So sorry for that. Hopefully this works. This is our 5th year of going to this event. So this is Giancarlo. I think he's on the call today. So one of the things that makes this event,
okay, so we're in the beer garden here,
really
and we're
unique.
talking about how do you say cheers. So what's the conservative way to say cheers?
Tumbol.
And the less conservative way to say cheers?
So one of the things that makes this unique over all of the other events is that, at least I haven't been to the new Pause on Eris, but the beer garden, at first it seemed like, okay, this is kind of a cheap way out of getting everybody to just kind of hang out. But what's unique about it is they're all picnics. So you pretty much, everybody sits within about 2 picnic tables of each other, and you talk and you actually network, right? You're forced to communicate with everybody. Even at Claris, like an Engage Austin or the past DevCons, at the hotel, you sort of have maybe you might be in a lobby area where there's a couple tables and chairs and you talk to some people, but this one is much more dense. Everybody's right there and you can sort of kind of like a bar scene in a way. Everybody's relaxed because basically they're all having a pint and you share a lot of fun. And I think compared to some of the other events, this is one of the biggest ones from a networking aspect in that sense. And that's what makes it really special.
Okay, wait. Now we have to... Say that again?
This is Tom and James from UK, BetterForms users.
Oh, I haven't...
Yeah,
Okay, so
this
we're just getting set up, everybody's coming
particular
in.
event has 2 tracks. In past years, they've had 3 tracks. And there's also a big diversity of like how many tracks you should run. And I think it's nice to have a little bit of a choice versus single track type events. But this one has 1 big main room and then one smaller room.
Getting ready for the conference. We're going to have the keynote. It's going to kick it off in a few minutes. Should be good.
That's pretty good camera, I think. This gentleman, Stathis, I think it is. He's from Greece, and he gave a really interesting talk. This is his first part of his talk, but I think I have a slide later on, and it was quite controversial, actually. I think I got a lot of pushback. And the other talk is bad code, good for business. And the concept here is he's located in Greece, and the developer doesn't see a lot of FileMaker. So he has to work sort of either this local to Greece, which the average cost of a FileMaker developer is lower than, say, in North America, or he's got to extend outside of it. And basically his premise of his talk is that if he's on it with bad code, that actually ends up being good for business. If he starts a project with bad code, that ends up being bad for business. If And there's one more sort of caveat. I'll wait till the actual slide here.
Come on.
I know it looks like all we do is drink beer at this event, and I think that's somewhat true. Ian gave a great talk, Ian Dempson there, and he is originally Canadian. He's living in the UK, and I love watching him present because it's very, very, I don't know how to say it, very kind, really nice presentation. And he talked about the takeaways using semantic search and FileMaker, and just to share some of the big ones. I think he's going to be publishing some of his findings, but he's done quite a bit of research here. The main one is when you're storing your embeddings, don't store them in a text field, a container as text, because that significantly reduces the performance hit in FileMaker. And that was the biggest thing here.
I tried to find out what.
And next is, I want to say our own, but it's not really our own, but Jeroen, and he's from Netherlands, and he gave a great talk on project management app that he's been working on. And if you've been in some of our Friday Live from maybe 2 or 3 months, he gave a preview of that, and hopefully we can, Jeroen, if we could have you on at some time in the future. Tremendous wealth of information. He's one of these people in our community that from a business aspect, he's great to pick their brains with. You know, we have a few key people in our community that we have on Friday Live all the time, like Neil Manchester. We have Jesse Roberts from time to time, and Jeroen's another one of these guys that I just want to hear him share all this information and strategies for doing things. His talk went over really well. His presentation, and hopefully he'll come in the future to share his out. Or developer streets. You get an idea. Hopefully this conveys the social aspect of this particular, and it's unfortunate, but there's a lot of who's who here. Here is Johan from Square Moon in Sweden. It's a big platinum company. There was Klaus just over here from Datatrix or Datamatics. I think his company's. Matt Navarre. Breeze Norton from One More Thing. Giancarlo. Sporting a pretty good looking t-shirt, I must say. It's really unfortunate. Egbert, who runs this conference, announced at the beginning of the conference that this would be his last one, and he's choosing to continue. The conference has typically between 80 and about 110 attendees, and mostly from Europe, but I would say a good 10% or so, or maybe even a bit more from North America and so on. And it was really quite sad. It was actually it was a slideshow, and I think I got some clips from the end here. It was a slideshow at the end, and I'm not gonna lie, I think half the developers had tears on their face because it's such a relevant thing to everybody's lives. So this is just part of my talk. And 7 years ago when we were first there, we gave a demo. I gave a demo of an app that I was working on that basically allowed dynamic page generation from FileMaker, which later became BetterForms. And it was in .fmp that we first sort of announced it, and immediately afterwards, as soon as I walked out of this, not this room here, but 7 years ago, we had a couple people come up to us right away and say, want to set up. And that's when we turned it into a multi-tenant app. It was single tenant, copy it everywhere. And we turned it into a multi-tenant app, and that's sort of when BetterForms was born. So we're really thankful for the event and try to support it as much as we I gave a talk on practical real-world use cases for this gentleman was really, really good. If he's a professor at the University of Madrid, and I think he also teaches in Zurich or somewhere else as well, but he also works for one of the dev houses in Europe. And he talked about what actually AI is, the history of AI, and at a really high technical level, how things work and how attention mechanisms work, and what made AI become AI over the past 3 years or 5 years versus what we had, like just the machine learning that we had in the past. If you ever have the opportunity, I can find his name. Maybe somebody can put it in chat if you know his name. And it's listed in the .fmp site as well. But really, really good to hear him talk. He goes super, super fast because he had all his university slides and he just wanted to run through as many as he could, which was awesome. Here he's just talking about how to go about using or installing FileMaker's ability to have on-site models. Right. If you do get a chance to hear him talk or you see him anything on YouTube from him, I definitely recommend watching that.
No, I never. Hello, say hello. 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 These guys do a good job now. All right. Cheers.
More slides. Here's one of Stathis's slides here. I think, oops, I'm just going to go back here for a second. And here you get an idea. He was showing about basically the number of FileMaker jobs in various countries. And you can see the United States was way over on this line. And here's just cropped off. Canada is number 2, which I'm actually surprised at because we're 1/10 of the size, but we're about 25% of the United States in terms of FileMaker jobs. Although I'm not sure for you Canadian FileMaker consultants if you see that ratio. We see it. We see much smaller, but and then comes Australia and UK and so on. And he was just showing that Greece is way down here, and he's had to change his strategies for marketing. And I think that's really, really important. Is something that we don't talk too much about in our community about how a developer in one country has to position themselves and market themselves different than in another country. So here was the some of his takeaways from is bad code good for business, basically selling to the try selling client satisfaction, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's got a bunch of bad code. And that's how he's positioned himself in terms of being a competitive developer. It's like, hey, I'm going to actually make you happy instead of all your spaghetti stuff that you have. This is just one I thought was kind of interesting. His takeaways is bad code good for business. If he's doing time-based billing, bad code, yes, and as time goes up and money goes up. And then project-based, he's basically saying depending on how you've engaged into this project, it may be good. And value, but if you're selling bad, then you want to bad code. A good code actually takes, I guess, more time. And that was pretty interesting. You got a lot of pushback too. And then finally, this was a slideshow. And again, this is my last slide for this event. This is a slideshow that they filmed. It's quite long, so we won't watch the whole thing. But it has, these are from like all of people uploaded their slides. And what's really unique about this conference is they have a calendar. Anybody can go and place something on this. You see the calendar change quite a bit. Somebody talks, somebody says, oh, I want to talk about that too. I'll show you a technique. And then so that you get a lot of technical stuff because you can display your technical stuff without having too much preparation. You don't have to have a bunch of slides and things. So somebody just whipped up this slideshow like half an hour before or day before. And it was about 25 minutes long showing things. And honestly, like I said, I would say probably half the audience, especially everybody who's been there multiple times, had got a tear to their eyes. So a few of the pictures. Fabrice from One More Thing. He also had a hosting company. You may want to check out in Europe. And for more FileMaker developers, and a few more. You had Matt Navarre, Vince Manat, oh my gosh, I can't believe it for everybody's here. But and this is Egbert, the gentleman who runs the event. Unfortunately, it made it sound like he's not going to bother participating too many in the future. He said maybe. We'll see. One last thing. This was really cool. The cards. One of the things he did was quite thoughtful, I think, is the badges were actual smart or NFC business cards. So you can program the card, and then you tap it to your phone, and then it takes you either to a website, or you can put all the information in like a V card. And so that was kind of cool. So they're kind of keepsakes, and that was kind of a parting gift from him. And I think that's it. Lots of pretzels. So that was the first event. I hope if it is, I'll go faster in the next one. Let me know. Let's see. This one's not, don't worry, there's not too many slides here. This is CQDF, is a conference Quebec of FileMaker developers. And we were a sponsor at this one. IP we can't really sponsor because they don't have any corporate sponsorship. And I think that's maybe sort of good and true to his goals. I respect that. You just support by going. CQDF is primarily a French-speaking conference. There was 3 English-speaking, Doug Gardner and Wim Decor were the only people who spoke English, I believe. And here's just me about to go on for the presentation. This particular conference has about, I think there was about 90, maybe 100 people or so. I'm not sure. Really interesting though, because they are a pretty tight community. You know, Quebec is sort of a hamlet of French-speaking people. So all the developers are really regional to there. There were a few people from outside, but not too many. One of the big social events on day one. And I gave a talk on API first design, just coding principles and strategies and sort of lessons learned. This is sort of similar to a talk I've given here on Friday Live past. Just the main gist of this talk was structure your code, and you can't do this all the time. Again, this is going to be more expensive if you're doing this on the clock, but it's only 15%, 20% more expensive to begin with, and then the price drops down significantly. But the main strategy is that you have UI interface code. You probably already do some of in your existing FileMaker development, where you'll have maybe a folder of all buttons and things to handle buttons per layout. You have business logic layer, services layer. Services are just do something, send an email, or create an invoice, and so on. Have a UI or interface or connector layer that is a low level script. And these are almost dumb levels, and they just take some inputs and do something. This is just how it ends up. That is it for CQDF. Wim Decor gave a really great talk on, and I imagine he's going to continue to present talk. And it's basically, he said 5 things you didn't know about FileMaker Server, but it turned out to be about 20 or 25, and he just sort of stopped when he ran out of time. A lot of really good takeaways that he hasn't, he's sort of considered the server god, and these were a lot of things that he hasn't talked about before. I'm going to bring Pearson on if you're available. I'll talk about this last conference.
Yeah, let's see. Well, what do you want me to share first? Because there's so much.
Yeah, you know what? I'll start playing with this, and then feel free to chime in on your thoughts as we go along. So just for preference, config was a Figma is a software that we use, or Pearson uses, I just look at, to generate user interface. Right, so it's basically it's a UI designing tool. They're about 7 years, and they had this conference. And Pearson, how many people were at the conference?
I think over.
Sorry, my thing is lagging out here a little bit. Just a sec here. Pause this. I can't. My computer's lagging here. Just. Sorry, did you say how many?
About 10,000 people, or a little bit over. It was a lot of people there.
So that's 100 times bigger than the other two conferences, right? And you think, oh, you should be able to do 100 than networking, but turns out you have very little networking. I talked to people, but they were just introductions. I don't know. Did you talk to many people from the?
Yeah, I got to meet quite a few people, but yeah, like you said, it's a lot of, there's so many people there. There's so many people to meet. It's a lot of just introductions, and then maybe a little conversation about the last session that you were in, and then you move on, and and you just get lost in the of everybody.
Yeah.
But I did actually.
I
got to see 4 of my old classmates from when I studied global business and digital arts in Waterloo, and then through them, like seeing them again, I found out that there was even another former classmate of ours at this conference, and it was all our first time. I think this was easily their biggest turnout for config this year, or just ever. So it was really cool to see a lot of my former classmates also at this conference with me, and just running into them out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's exceptionally rare, I think. But mine's 100 times bigger, so it's 100 times the chance, like apples to apples, that you'd see me bump into people, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pre-registration party, so it was the day before kind of thing, and they had food booths, free alcohol.
They had a
and
DJ.
Interestingly enough, yeah, that's right, DJ. What else do they have there? I thought it was kind of funny. They had a here that had this sensory rest area. This is for sure something you would not see at FileMaker conference as a sensory rest area. It's just that I don't know how this is you're resting your senses here, because it was just as loud inside, but it's cool. The attendees here are so different. It is so radically different than the other events that I mentioned earlier today. We'll just play this a bit here. Just a few more scenes here. It's maybe not the best picture of us. My computer, I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, come on around here.
These are some of Pearson's.
We're at Config, which is Figma UX conference. We're gonna have a Friday live. That's our regular meetup. It's this Friday at.
You probably know about. This is interesting. Really different ways.
Booths inside the actual conference. Here's the I think they call it the customization station, and so part of the swag bag that everybody got was this nice tote bag with config on it, and you could go to this station and have a bunch of their patches ironed onto your bag just to customize and make it your own. Problem was that because there's so many people and only so many booths and stations, the lineup was insanely long. I didn't actually end up going through this one, but I think the lineup easily could have been like an hour and a half wait just to do this.
You're missing. I think anybody lined up for this, and they had a side store as well, and anybody who lined up for that pretty much missed a couple events.
Yeah,
which might be okay.
There was another station. It was kind of interesting. Also, a very kind of West Coast tech world type of installation, but it was a special camera that you'd sit in front of, and it captured your aura. And I'm not sure how it works. I'm not sure if it actually worked, but they would capture like the frequencies or wavelengths emanating from your body, and it would, colorize it on this Polaroid. And I actually found out last night, hanging out with some of my friends, there was a Slack channel for config, and apparently there was a group of people who were standing in line for that for 5 hours, they said, which I think at that point, that's just
crazy.
that's just your own
crazy.
fault. They were upset
I'm
about
pretty
those
sure,
guys.
yeah.
They must have been
For
Nick's lines. There were so many people there. There's no way that they should have actually stayed for 5 hours in that line just for a photo, but that's just the type of activities and types of people that showed up to this conference. It was a huge variety of eccentric types of designer people.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is the other conferences with the tech side. So one hemisphere, and this we're all creatives and distinctly different events. Like I don't think the custom swag would go too well at a FileMaker event. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think so. But it's kind of cool.
Maybe the
and I totally get it for this community.
laser engraving
Yeah.
might be more that style. They all gave out these special config water bottles, and they had another station where you could go in and have something laser engraved onto it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. This is the event was at the Moscone Center, so that's pretty much that's one of the biggest in San Francisco, or at least West Coast events for technical things. Apple used to do their stuff here all the time. He's just getting ready to make the keynote. Get an idea down. This is one of the rooms, and there's about 3 other ones, comparable size. Really neat animations. Everything again is very designer centric. They didn't cheap out on anything here. I don't think. They spent an incredible amount branding. And I think it really makes sense for this kind of an event because everything is about creativity. And I think that's something that we sort of need in our community. Is we don't have a lot of, for a while we had a few talks, people talking about UX and things, but we don't have much talking about actually being creative. And we are solution providers. We're developers, we're systems engineers, and we don't really, in order to build the greatest things, I think you have to sort of be a little bit, have some creative juices flowing. And I don't see very many talks focused on that. And that was my biggest takeaway from this update here so far. Number really sort of high level speakers. This was kind of interesting. Basically, they were saying that when you're building something, and this is a common theme that I've heard in about Ford talks, iterate fast. And we sort of know this, but do we actually do it? Like when you're speccing out a project, your client, are you really iterating with your client, or are you saying, okay, this is the design, we go back and forth, lock the design in, now the build phase. That's what we do. And then we build. And if there's a change request, something's out of scope, then we go back and create a new statement of work. And it's a heavy process. And one of the takeaways here was that now, in fairness, most of these companies are not just necessarily consultants; they are software as a service, similar to us. They're selling a product in some fashion. The work here. There are a number of consulting houses that attended as well. But in this case, that applies more to a product and how to iterate quick.
Charles, actually, do you mind staying on that slide just for a second?
Oh, yeah.
The worse is better. Sorry. You brought up something yesterday that was part of the opening keynote. And the opening keynote was just about Figma kind of releasing a lot of the new features and talking about the newest updates and improvements that they've made to their software. But the founder of Figma, he made a really interesting point, saying that at last year's Config conference, one of the tweets that he received afterwards was someone asking, I can't, very excited to see what you come out with next year, but I'm more interested to see what you remove, because there's only so many things you can add to software before it gets overwhelming and it just starts to do everything okay instead of a few things perfectly. So I think this is kind of ties into the worse is better. Maybe that I'm just reading here. There's a point where less functionality is a preferable option to is a preferable option in terms of practicality and usability. So that person tweeting at the founder, asking, what are you going to remove next year, kind of plays into this notion of, maybe less is more. I thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah. And they actually redid their UI to make it a lot cleaner looking. Well, it feels cleaner anyway. I don't know if it actually is.
I'm really excited to use it. That I've never been at an Apple conference or watched any of that kind of stuff, like the new iPhone releases. I've never been into any of that, but now that I was here and Figma is a software that I use every single day, hearing them release these new improvements and talk about their methodologies behind making these changes, I found it incredibly inspiring, and I'm really excited to go back to work.
Yeah. Right answer. You want to talk? Were you in this one? Was this, or was this mine? I was in. Okay, so I didn't know if it was a keynote. This is sort of along that same line. Is, you can do from products. You can have this really, really sort of crazy high end thing for $500, or you can have a set of IKEA knives for I guess about $10 each, for $50. And it's like trying to decide where you're going to sit when you're building your tool, whatever you're building. Are you going to build? You're going for this angle and this positioning, or are you going down for this opposite side here? This is a layout or a UI that was automatically generated with some that they're adding into Figma. And they took a different approach than what we did. In BetterForms, when we added AI, what we're doing is we're actually generating actual code. We're generating actual HTML or JSON, and that internally generating HTML. What Figma did is they don't have any code as such under the hood. It's a design program, not a coding program. So they generated based on predefined, they have a whole bunch of texts and concepts. And then the AI picks the stuff like, there's a header section, a subline, a label, some kind of card, and a big feature card, and so on. And then the AI can pick that out. But what's neat is one of they talked about three, and jump to Pearson, but they talked about three main takeaways of how they can integrate AI. And I think this is something that we can learn in BetterForms, and maybe you guys can learn in other products as well. The first one was to increase onboarding. In Figma, it was they called it like a white canvas, blank canvas, something to that effect, of getting rid of that blank canvas. Like, where do I start? Where do I even start with this app? And from a prompt, they generated these types of AIs, or UIs, I should say. So that was the first one, is blank slate. And I've been thinking about it all for the past couple of days since I saw this. And I think we can do that easily. I think we can basically say, hey, I need to create a portal for my company, and the portal should have this, this, and this, and just tell it all the things. And it can scaffold pretty much the entire app, and probably wire the whole app up, at least the interconnection between the pages, right away. So I think that's going to be really, really powerful. I'm really excited to start experimenting on that as soon as we got the schema stuff down. And I think that's going to be the next piece of AI that we incorporate into BetterForms, is going to be that starting off with either a blank page and using the AI from that, or even the entire app. Do you remember this here, this picker? They call it the
Yeah. The
if you want to,
adjust tone picker. I guess that
tone
was
knob.
that's their auto-generated text kind of customization graph where in Figma, you know, for like I've experienced this where I know that there's going to be a block of text, but I don't know what the text will be. I just use a lorem ipsum paragraph. But here they've implemented this AI tool to allow you to add in generated AI text, but choosing the tone that you want the text to convey. So you could have a very professional, like choosing between the Y scale of professional versus or casual, and then I'm having a little trouble reading what the X axis.
Expanded, concise, professional, and casual.
So do you want it to be a really long professional excerpt on something informative, or maybe you want it to be professional but very concise because maybe you're using this tool for like a presentation of some kind. So having that dial to choose where on that spectrum you want your text to land in, I thought that was a really interesting feature that they've added. It makes it so much easier to just add some placeholder text, or even maybe inspire some real text that you eventually want to use in the final product.
I think you can definitely do that. Like, for example, if you're using some AI in in an app, FileMaker app, and you want to the AI is, let's say, used to generate the content of an email, right? You're going to email somebody some information in some CRO. You could easily have a little small picker, and this could be built with just nine boxes, or you could, you know, make it a 4 across, so that's 16 variants or whatever, and you can put whatever two metrics you have on the side, and just a picker. And as soon as you pick it, it could just go right away to the AI and regenerate your thing. It's like, no, I want it a little shorter, I want it a little bit more concise, or I want it more empathetic or less empathetic, that kind of thing, depending on what your use case is. So it's just an interesting way of visual way, two-dimensional way of really understanding those settings instead of prompts.
Yeah, a bit of a recurring theme from them talking about the new features that they're releasing with AI specifically was how do we optimize, or how do we accelerate the mundane tasks that people don't want to do. So this being one of them, just I don't know what text I don't know what text to add in this section, so I'm just gonna generate it because I don't have time to think about copy. Or another really interesting AI capability that they've added was in Figma, you're working in layers like Photoshop, let's say. So you have, you know, at some point on a mockup, I'll have, you know, could be 1,000 layers of just different elements. And in some of these larger agencies, you know, the developers might actually have to refer to that layer list and figure out what are they actually looking at. And it's really hard to name 1,000 layers. It's really hard to take that time and to justify putting that effort into it. So they've added another AI tool to automatically generate new names for each layer. So instead of it just being called group one, it might be called like hero photo, or like header photo. And they do that for every single layer in a really fast time frame. I think another one was generating kind of dummy data. If I'm creating a table, and maybe some of you who have done work with, or I'm sure the developers know, if I'm working on a design that involves a long table, I don't have time to change every single cell in that table to show instances. So they have this AI tool that, you know, it understands what you're creating, and if you duplicate it, it'll generate some new text or some new alternate options for each time you duplicate that row.
And they're relevant too.
Very relevant. So the recurring theme from a lot of these features was just reducing time to complete these mundane tasks, which I thought was a really interesting and really valuable direction to take AI.
Yeah. So that was the second one. And then there's a third one, which is wrapping up, as they called it, and basically using AI to complete your job. whatever it's for. I think we can use that second one within BetterForms for groups and things like that, giving things comments. We don't have it in FileMaker, but you could easily have auto generate comments. We could use it to organize our actual chunks of how our UI works, and I think that might be where we could investigate in. These guys here, okay,
This was just
they were a guest. Sorry, go ahead.
a product placement for their toy company. I thought it was an interesting,
Yeah, totally
kind of funny.
So they have this little Furby toy thingy, and it basically has a voice box inside. And they were saying that how, embrace storytelling, how this is going to become the next greatest toy. And personally, I don't really think it is, because I think it's just something that's a wrapper. So basically what it is, it's an AI voice chat. So they put ChatGPT with a sounding voice, like something you get off like an educational channel, children's channel, that type of voice, and you talk to it. So you set it down and says, "Oh, I can play joke and not jokes and things like that." It's basically AI. And then what they did, the one technique, and I mentioned this earlier, that they did in this to make sure that the box doesn't start talking about, I don't know, whatever kid's going to ask it about various things that maybe are inappropriate, is they have another AI model that monitors the output. So they basically take the output of whatever the conversational part is, and then they say, is this appropriate for a child and based on these constraints, you're not going to talk about anything political or sexual or whatever. And it monitors that. And then that's how they're getting their claim to being safe. But it's really just a wrapper. They said, don't magically solve real customer problems. Don't just be a GPU wrapper. But it literally is, physically and metaphorically. Like it's a case wrapped around GPT. So I don't know.
But I where I do give them credit was the way they talked about how they were testing it and what they expected and what the result was. And the left, he has a 4-year-old son who they gave these first prototypes to just to play with and see how he enjoys it. And they noticed that obviously at first, like any new toy, is very interesting, but it gets old. It gets old quick. You ask it a couple knock jokes, cool, and then you put it down and you have to pick it up again. But what they discovered, or I think they kind of might have switched their idea to, was that this doesn't have to be the toy. It can be the sidekick to the child as they play with other toys. So their example was, while his son was playing with trains, like a little train set, he has this little sidekick next to him who is creating scenarios, or who is just, actively playing with him, creating stories.
Trains and fire engines.
Yeah. Like it's just like as if it's another friend. I think that kind of opens up a whole other discussion about maybe I don't know about the dangers, but the impact it might have on a child to rely on an artificial sidekick as opposed to making real friends. But I think that's a whole other conversation. But I thought it was a really interesting direction that they kind of they switched gears to.
It would have been neat if they had vision in it, because then I could see the child. They showed us a picture of it sitting on the side, and the child was pushing like a fire engine or a train or something around on the floor, like a car.
I couldn't tell if it did have a camera, because he mentioned it sitting there and then commenting on what was happening, and I don't know if you can do that with like maybe the kid.
It did say about the audience. It did say, "Oh, there's a big audience" or something like that.
Yeah, it recognized, he picked it up and he was talking to it, saying like, "Hey, we have a say hi to everybody at this conference, and you're allowed to use bigger words because this is a very technical group." And so it was able to its vocabulary and it did recognize, oh, wow, there are a lot of you. And I'm not sure if that was because he hinted at it being a conference or if it truly did see how many people were there. But it was kind of cool. I thought this was one of the presentations that I took less away from, but I thought it was still like everything was still
Interestingly enough, I think for this, but the real interesting takeaway here, now that we sort of visited and I see your paradigm on it, is that if you use the AI to monitor and it chimes in when something of interest, that's really, really interesting. Like, in other words, if I'm doing my work and my AI is like a pair coding partner, I'm not turning to normally now our workflow is I turn towards, like Jason said, I go and paste everything in ChatGPT. It's beside me, but it's not pairing with me. It's adjacent to me. And then I take the stuff and I bring it back. But if it's just watching and saying, oh, I noticed this variable is not set, right? It's kind of a little bit more interactive. Or I notice your UI. Do you want to align these fields? Like, and it just kind of chimed in and chimed out as if it's provided. That might be interesting.
kind of like Clippy from Microsoft Word back in 2000.
Yeah, so we're back to Clippy.
Yeah, but this is a better Clippy.
Well, I'm sure Clippy helped lots of people. This
So-
is, I think, what slides?
These slides were from a presentation that I went to, because there was 4 presentations at every hour for anybody to go to. There was a lot of stuff to watch. So Charles and I, we weren't in the same rooms for most of the conference, but this one was a design, I guess a design researcher, designer for NASA, and she was talking about how she communicates with what she called the space nerds. So how does a designer communicate with these space nerds to actually understand and improve their workflows? So one of her main points was to practice empathy, learning their tool set, taking an interest, being patient. So she used as an example that everybody at NASA is just obsessed with spreadsheets. Everything that they do is based on spreadsheets, calculating data, just obtaining data. So in order for her to understand how to improve their work or improve their workspace, she started using charts, just all kinds of data sets, like collecting her own and making that her main focus on how to conduct her own work. And so that was she was able to create a relation between herself and the NASA scientists, taking an interest in their in how they work, taking an interest in their hobbies. She liked Star Wars, and obviously there's going to be a big overlap between NASA workers and Star Wars there. Being patient. She talked about how a lot of these guys just like to talk and talk and talk. You maybe in the break room, you just go in for a coffee and then you end up listening to a half-hour story about whatever. But just, practicing that empathy with her, kind of like her user base, really helped her understand what to do in her own job.
I was just looking at my notes for AI companions because this was a part of a series, or at least the previous slide was a part of a series on AI companionship. One of the things it says conversational AI models should listen more rather than just give a result. And they showed 2 GPT responses. And one says, I'm feeling really anxious about my presentation. And then they showed just blurred out 2 responses. And one response was kind of conversational. This chat box, this one. And the other one was, gave a whole bunch of tips right away and answers. And that was kind of interesting. The other one I have is, this is tied with what you just said. Assistants should respond in a similar voice to the user. So not just in UI, but if you're using AI and you're talking to a person, if you can respond in their voice, like I have a setting in my GPT where I say, I want really succinct, brief answers. Don't give me a whole bunch of stuff. Don't keep asking, do I want to learn more or anything like that? I'll ask that. And the other one was, don't be too positive. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like, stop being really positive. If the person's a little bit negative, be a little bit negative as well. So you're, again, similar ground.
Yeah, like don't patronize me. Don't
Yeah.
miss my feelings. Like their example of I'm really nervous for this presentation was one very analytical, very logical response was there's no reason to be worried. Take some deep breaths, take a walk, do all these things. Like it just started spitting out solutions, and it was a huge paragraph of text. Whereas the more valuable experience for the user was for it just to ask or just to relate and say, "Ah, man, yeah, that is tough. Presentations are hard. How are you feeling?" And kind of having a more of a human conversation rather than just a very logical solution-based conversation. And that actually, it reminded me of, if anybody is a fan of Parks and Recreation, one of my favorite shows. And there was a point where one of the characters, he's the boyfriend, and his girlfriend is complaining about something, complaining about work, just kind of venting about her day. And the boyfriend is giving solutions, saying, "This is how you feel. This is what you should do about it." And she got mad at him and said, "I just want you to listen. You don't have to give me solutions." And that was that I took it for my own personal life, just communicating with my friends or communicating with anybody. You don't always need to provide a solution. Sometimes you just got to listen. And I think that's kind of what this AI was offering people. This was a different AI companion than the toy. This was supposed to actually replace like human connection. That was a very dystopian kind of presentation, but the
yeah, their replica, I think, is basically an AI friend.
Yeah, pretty creepy.
This is just going. Sorry, slide here. Again, more on iterating quick.
This was the NASA designer just kind of talking about how to relate her work to the scientists as well. Because she's the designer and they're all scientists. She doesn't have to get into all the jargon of design principles and everything. Using small words, showing work, showing the progression of what she's working on really helped communicate her job to them.
I think this is.
Oh yeah, this is
this. Let me just see if this will play here.
All right, so we're in the Waymo, and this jacket.
Oh, sorry. So we're okay. Preface a bit that I sort of say it here. We have this homo-coeli guy, and Waymo has this problem with this because it's not a real person behind the car. And he's standing in front of the car, pointing at the car, and of course the car can't drive. We hopped in, and I'm thinking, I've heard about these stories. People like obscure the sensors and stuff, like throw a milkshake at it or something like that. So our very first ride in the Waymo, which is an autonomous car, this guy's standing in front here. But the car really is aggressive. And it actually, as soon as the guy turned to get out of the way a little bit, I don't know if we're going to see it, but it kind of moved and jutted around him to make sure that the was like just like a human would.
They're waving at the Waymo. Those kids.
And it's.
Or are they going like?
Yeah, they were just waving at it. Like the kid looked really excited about it.
Look at that! It went right around them. See that? Yeah. And like, that was really aggressive.
Like I was really amazed. Like, you can hear me say it here. I'll play it again. So basically, the homeless guy is standing in front of the car, and he's kind of directing the car, and just like a frustrated Uber driver, what did you go? They move around and kind of go around them, and that's exactly what the car did. So it felt amazingly real. Like you can see him standing here, right? And it doesn't move out of the way. So the car is like, okay, this guy's not going. So the car actually watched the steering wheel turns to the left, and it kind of went forward around him. The guy's still in front of the right though right now, and it went around him because he's not moving.
Oh, these guys are walking across. Oh, it's red light too.
They're waving at the Waymo. Those kids.
The Waymo let the people go across the street.
They're just waving at it. Like the kid looked really excited about it.
Look at that! It went right around them. See that?
Yeah.
And like, that was really aggressive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't.
Even
It
the
says like,
AI 's
screw it.
got
I'm gonna.
patience.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really impressive. I
Okay,
was really, really impressed. I don't know if anybody else has written one of these things before.
They haven't integrated Spotify yet, though.
Hey, it's Charles, and
Oh,
I'm here
nice-
with
nice
Pearson,
marketing.
and we're just.
But we're checking out the UI as the car is driving around. Our trip lasted about 20 minutes. It's about 40% maybe more expensive than a.
Like, it doesn't feel like I haven't actually even looked to see what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, if I was blind, I would have just thought it was a rude driver not talking to me.
So I was pretty impressed. 100%.
Oh yeah, you can tell with
Yeah, so it's got
The
some
way the
IR
future
there,
here.
just in case somebody in this Tinder date.
I would, for the instance, like there's novelty, and then you almost for a while we almost forgot that there's no driver there. And that's not on the second or third ride. That was the very first one. A really, really good job. And there's zillions of these things.
kind of over that.
I'm not sure what to. Some more on the UI in the car. They did a nice job there.
So we're just checking out the Waymo UI. That's kind of neat. You can zoom around your car, change the radio station, change the temperature. So it's not a bad interface at all.
Can't do that with an Uber.
Considering. And you said you can pull over as well?
Yeah, just
Don't push that. Who knows what? I don't know. What would you do? I guess to let yourself out.
I guess so. Yeah, maybe if you need to, I don't know, anybody who's driving home after a bar night, maybe you can pull over early.
Yeah. Roll the window down. Just a few seconds ago, it actually backed up because the car in front started backing up because it went too far through the intersection. That was pretty cool.
So this car here
moved
went
out of
through
the
the
way really
intersection, then he
quick.
backed up, and the Waymo really
I think we're just going through
backed up
Chinatown
right
here
away.
in San Francisco.
I'm not sure if there's audio sensors. The guy did honk, or somebody honked. I don't know. But that was a little bit more about that. This is something that I don't think would find in a FileMaker conference, is filling out a sticker and writing it on the wall. These are typically what the booths look like. There's a number of booths for the plugins, things like that, just to give you an idea. Sorry, my computer's, I'm not sure what just started. Give you an idea how busy this place was. Pearson, you want to jump in on this one, or you want me to? We were both in this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so this was Simone Yetch, and she's a self-employed inventor, and so I'm sure many of you might have seen her quote unquote inventions on YouTube, and so she branded herself as this queen of shitty robots, where she would just find something funny to make. Maybe it's like she had like a hat or like a helmet that brushed your teeth, but it worked horribly, but that was kind of part of the niche. And so she's this YouTube creator who did a presentation yesterday, kind of talking about her experience, growing as this inventor, creating her own brand. And she showed us this, or she had us participate in this experiment, in this brainstorm experiment where we took 2 minutes, everybody took 2 minutes to write down as many use cases for a single brick as possible. She said, write down every single thing you think of. Doesn't matter how dumb it is, doesn't have to be good. Just write down as many as you can. And the result of that experiment was just kind of to showcase that you start to run out of good ideas quickly, but it forces you to have to get a little more creative. And I thought that was just a really funny experiment. I think I would guess 99% of the people, one of the ideas was just to use it as a weapon or something to Windows. But the ideas
to smash.
Yeah, just to smash stuff. But the ideas didn't matter as long as you were able to think of a brick differently than how it is meant to be used. It was that's the point, is just to practice thinking outside of the box.
Yeah, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, she was great.
I just counted. I thought I had 20, and I think it's 19.
And I think I got
mine was correctional device cycle instead of smashing. Laptop prop, you know, dog bowl, elevator, chimney, hammer, poop scraper off your feet, you know. It's a really interesting drill. Certainly good to force you to do something. I'd like to do the same thing with a feature. And say, hey, this is a new feature that we have in our toolkit or a new ability. What can you do with it? And come up with 20 things. I think that'd be in
I think you could also ask, take 2 minutes to think of as many solutions to this problem, and how can think of as many feature solutions as you can to solve this one thing. I think that's another way to look at it and create new ideas. That actually kind of ties into something. One of the presentations that I watched, I don't think I took any photos, but I took a lot of notes about it. And it was this designer who he was taking a critical look at design systems. And so that might not mean much to you guys, but it's something that I'm very familiar with. Design systems being kind of like the building blocks to use and build something. So he did an experiment with his coworker, kind of analyzing the value of design systems. And so he and his friend were just designing a single page, like it was just like a profile page or something. And so they timed themselves, and he used the design system. He made something in 12 minutes. And his friend did not use the design system, went straight from scratch, and it took him 3 hours. Yeah, that's okay. I don't have any photos of this, but the point being, he took 12 minutes. His friend took 3 hours to build the same exact page, but they looked really different. And while his was fine, it worked. It did what it needed to do. It followed the design system. His friend created a lot more interesting solutions because he had to think outside the box, or he wasn't constrained to a box. And so it's not to say that design systems are useless by any means, but it exemplified the creativity that you're forced to use when you're looking at something a different way than what someone else might see.
Just gonna try to jump slides here. Computer's glitching again, so the end, for our community, design system is maybe good or bad, or it's a little tricky in FileMaker in general. Some people do have sort of.
He wasn't saying that design systems are bad. It's just that we have to think about them differently. And I say we as in the design community, because his example was that every company, every brand has their own design system, but they've all sort of started to look the same. When you look at messaging apps, the difference between the iMessage or WhatsApp or WeChat or whatever.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this to start from a certain slide, and I can't pause it right away, so I apologize right there. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to jump to this slide, and I don't know why it starts again. So, without having to fast forward through. There's a lot of talk on. I went to a lot of stuff on product management, and what company was he from? Sorry, I can't remember what he's from. But it was one of these, big tech companies. And basically, the biggest thing is biggest takeaways. Here they are. You can't really see them here, but all is really interact. And I'm going to be honest with you. After hearing his talk, I really started to see where Claris is in terms of their product managers and how they interface with the community. It actually made a lot more sense. I know we critique them quite a bit. Claris doesn't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, it seems to me from looking at this and hearing him talk, they're sort of on the mark there. Build with the community, feel the customer's pain, look up down instead of looking only what you're working on. Quality and speed over scope. So don't worry about a whole bunch of things. Just to nail out and scope it down a little bit. And he's saying basically use AI, focus on what matters. Was kind of his main takeaways. I'm going to jump forward because we're going to be tight for time here. If there's any particular slides in here, Pearson, that you want me to jump into, I'm just going to kind of go through these just quick.
Yeah, you can scroll through these. I think these were just a lot of just kind of small tidbits that I thought were interesting, but I think I got
This
most
guy
of
here is this chap here was a product manager for Meta, and he was basically, again, talking about feedback and focus on the activities from the product manager's perspective that returns the highest ROI. When I was in CDQF, I talked quite a bit with Doug Wallace, who's the for Europe, and he mentioned numerous times, people are approaching us all the time, he said, with ideas, but we have to look at the ROI on the idea. And he's, that's fine. They're sort of right in scope there. Not sure why my machine's doing this. This one was one that was interesting. I think teams, traditionally a team has one product manager, 5 to 10 engineers, 1 or 2 UX, 1 data analyst, 1 engineering manager. And they think with communication and tools, this is kind of the strategy that was set out in the 80s by companies like Intel. It's going to move into 1 product manager, 20 to 30 engineers, 2 to 5 UX, and maybe some data analysis or engineering management. And just because of the ability for us to communicate, they're saying that the report, usually you have 5 to 7 reports. They're showing companies like NVIDIA, where the CEO of NVIDIA has 40 direct reports, but no one-on-one meetings, 0 one-on-ones, where the opposite was sort of what you do in the past. So that was kind of interesting. I'm going to skip through.
This is just like a user testing thing. You can kind of skip through this.
Tell us about this one. What was this all about?
This was I'm not sure. I kind of showed up to this one late. I left the previous session and went to this one. And so he was kind of, he was very passionate about pixel fonts. Like that was his whole presentation. And he was focusing on the creativity that designers had to face back before we had the the number of pixels on our phones today. So each font was restricted to an 8x8 pixel grid. And so he's showing all of the different ways that you can represent letters or images being constrained to that size grid. And so there were so many different fonts that he was showing us, different ways to stylize them. This was before drop shadow was even you couldn't use drop shadow back then. So you had to draw your own drop shadow on the letters themselves. And it was a lot easier to just manipulate per pixel than it was to manipulate it in the background and just add a shadow there. So another experiment was done in this session where he sent everybody to a link where you could create your own letter. And he asked everybody, create a capital letter A on this 8x8 grid. And when you submitted it, it got shown on the big screen.
That's
so I think
cool.
it probably one of the next slides there, Charles. It's the one with all the green letters. So these were all the submissions from the people in the audience. There was over 1,000 letters, capital letter A's that were submitted. And he showed us, he was able to manipulate the data and show, here are all of the letters, and here are the ones that use the most pixels, and here are the ones that use the least amount of pixels, but they're all the letter capital A. And here are the ones that hits that you and someone else here have done the exact same custom letter A. But here are all of the unique ones that have never been implemented into a real font before. So over 1,000 submissions, I think easily over 800 of them were unique, never used in a typeface, not a replica of someone else who was also there. Some of them were abstract, some of them bold, some of them thin, but all of them were the letter A. And
That's
I thought
really
that was
neat.
Yeah, it was a really kind of powerful.
And to have that many people participate. That's pretty cool too.
That too, yeah. And it was all live data. You could see people, like everybody had their own little grid, and you could see them being drawn. I think all of the green ones were submitted, all the white ones or gray ones were still being worked on. But that was probably one of my favorite presentations. It wasn't something that directly related to me necessarily, but I thought it was just one of those like one of those TED Talks that you would just watch on YouTube because it was so interesting.
Yeah.
Again, like it just exemplified the level of creativity that designers had to face before technology was able to keep up.
Madeleine, if you're on the call, can you stop messaging me? All right. I think this is our last slide. I hope there's some takeaways from that. There is one thing that we did that was kind of cool at CQDF that we haven't done before, and that is with our Connect app. And this is something that we just sort of implemented, and that's really neat. You've seen this app before. This is the last thing we're going to finish off with. We have this concept of a social feed where you have these feed items here, and then you have a leaderboard, and the leaderboard has, I'm just going to open up the app on my phone. And if you already have it from a previous meetup, you're welcome to jump in there. And just going to open it up here. And what we did is we added and well, this as a feature, maybe next month, I'll just show you how we did it. It's crazy. Actually used AI to do it. It's really easy. So I have one post by Melina here. Actually, I'm going to use one post by Alex here. And if I jump and find Alex's post, I can find it. There it is here. And if I was to like it, I'm going to like it from my phone here. So I just clicked like. And you can see it actually automatically floats up to the so if I unlike it, it's all in real time and it floats back. I think that's pretty cool. It's really, really crazy easy to do. It's like one line of code almost and a tiny bit of CSS. And we're taking advantage of an experimental framework with real-time messaging FileMaker. So that was something that was really, really neat. We had it up on the screen and everybody was voting. And sorry, Pearson, you had mentioned how everybody contributed. And this is the same idea. And you saw all of these likes going up and down. And we had a prize for the top people. Felicia, in this case, won the top prize. So that concludes our Friday Live. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything like that. Thoughts? And I think what we'll do is we'll save this draw for after our video so that it's not boring. People are watching later on YouTube. Thank you, everybody. We'll continue the draw in just a second. I'm just going to end our recording right now. Hope to see you next month.